Welcome back to our Names of Jesus series, and we are in our second to last one, and we're going to talk about Jesus as the high priest. So for those of you who don't understand what a high priest is, welcome to the club. For us as Christians, it's not something that we really have in our mindset, but a quick and easy way to understand it would be it's somewhat like how the Pope functions for the Catholic Church. That's not a perfect example, but it's a way for us to understand it, that he's sort of the go-between for man and God, and he speaks to God on humans' behalf and to humans on God's behalf. So he has very high standing and a very high position in the church. So Jesus is called the great high priest, the fulfillment of that role in Jewish culture. And Hebrews is a book that talks about that consistently. If you don't have time to read the whole thing, which would be really, really beneficial for you, you should read at least 2 through 10, and it gives you a really wonderful picture of how Jesus is the great high priest and goes through a bunch of different ways that he fulfills that role. We're going to talk about 2 of the main duties that the high priest had. They had a bunch of different things that they would do around the temple, offering sacrifices, lighting lamps, all that sort of stuff. But if you broke it down into 2 categories, it would be intercession and advocacy. Those are big words, but they break down pretty easy. So intercession is basically praying on other people's behalf. If you're part of a church, you may have an intercession team even who they just come to God and they pray on behalf of other people. So Jesus is our great high priest, and one of his jobs as great high priest is to intercede on our behalf to God. One of the beautiful verses in Hebrews 4 talks about how we have a high priest who is able to empathize with our weaknesses, that he has been here on earth and experienced the suffering and pain that we have. I wrote down a list of a bunch of things that Jesus went through when he was here on earth, so just let me read through those, and hopefully you've never experienced these things, but if you have, that you can take comfort that Jesus has experienced them, has made it through, and now intercedes on your behalf to God. So Jesus had no earthly possessions, he had no home. He was constantly had assaults on his character, rumors and accusations being made fun of behind the scenes. He was looked down on by people in authority. He lost his earthly father sometime throughout his teen years. He lost his earthly dad, Joseph. He was rejected by those in his hometown. The people who were closest to him, who followed him in his ministry for 3 years, when it came down to crunch time and he was before Pilate and the Sanhedrin, that they basically denied that they even knew who he was. And ultimately he was physically beaten, tortured, and then crucified. So hopefully none of you guys have ever gone through anything even close to that. But Jesus, who walked on this earth, has experienced pain beyond what we hopefully know, and can intercede on our behalf, that his prayers would be effective, because he's not a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but one who will come to God on our behalf and bring us grace and mercy in our time of need. So the second job of the high priest would be to advocate, and if you've been around the legal system, you'll understand what that means. If you've ever been in a courtroom and not just watched them on TV, you'll understand that people who are accused don't really talk all that much. They'll come and present their name, but then it's a lawyer who's the go-between for that person and the judge, and that they would speak to the judge and sort of relay that information to the person who's accused. And that's how Jesus, our great high priest, functions for us. That we don't have the standing or authority to come before God on our own, but Jesus comes with us and he advocates for us. The high priest in Jewish cultures would do that through sacrifices. That was the main way that they would do that. And Jesus is ultimately our sacrifice, that he has sacrificed himself once and for all, that we could have right standing with God. The most significant way that the high priest in the Jewish culture would do that would be on the Day of Atonement. He would come before the mercy seat, which is in the most holy place, a place that they could only enter once a year through Jewish law, and they would come and perform some ceremonial duties and do that and atone for all the sins of the people that they served on behalf of. So Jesus, as the great high priest, has actually through his death torn the veil of that temple and created for us the ability to come to God on our own, not on our own standing, but on Christ's. So he does that on our behalf. Jesus' sacrifice was final. He took care of it, that he advocates on our behalf, that he is our go-between, and he is our source of prayer and hope. So Jesus as our great high priest can bring us hope in life. I would really challenge you guys to go through Hebrews, the whole thing. If you don't have enough time to go through the whole thing, go through 2 through 10 and just dig into what it means to have a great high priest who is Jesus. There's no way I could fully explain the beauty of what all that means, but dig in when you get those little notes at the bottom to go to the old verses in the Old Testament that they're pointing to and really figure out what it means to have Jesus as our high priest. And I just want to end with a chunk from Hebrews 10. And I think it's just it was powerful when I was reading it. Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is his body, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, and for he who is promised is faithful. We serve a faithful God and have a great high priest. See you next time.